येषां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोतं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि।
Namaste and welcome to KYG or Kaivalya Yoga Gurukulam. I'm in the beautiful surroundings of a very ancient temple, ArthaNareeshwarar, where Shiva and Shakti, the Purusha and Prakriti, the primordial energies of the universe, of creation itself, is worshipped and symbolized. More about this beautiful temple in another video. But in this class, we shall study the next two sutras of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So welcome to this class in the Yoga Sutras. In the previous episode, in Sutra 5, we learnt about 5 categories or 5 types of Vrittis. And each of these types could be afflicting and non-afflicting. In Sutra 6, Patanjali simply enumerates or lists these 5 categories. Nothing more, nothing less. So in one sense, this is a very short sutra, that is Sutra 6. And then following this, the next 5 sutras, he explains each of these 5 Vrittis. So we will try and combine these. What are the 5 categories or types of Vrittis? I'm going to use the word Vrittis now. Vrittis means modifications, thoughts, impressions, however we want to call it. We should have learned that by now. What are these 5 types of Vrittis? Let us listen to the sutra. The 6th sutra goes like this. Pramāṇa-viparyaya-vikalpa-nidrā-smṛtayaḥ. The 5 types as enumerated by Patanjali are Pramana. Pramana is the first one, and that is simply cognition. What we comprehend through our senses. That is Pramana. A simple way to understand that at this moment, and we'll come to that in a bit. Viparyaya is you're seeing something, but you're perceiving it in a misguided manner. Misconception, if you will. So one is conception or cognition through senses. The other one is misperception or misconception, misguided perception, viparyaya, pramana and viparyaya. Both are coming through the senses primordially. One is direct perception, the other one, viparyaya, is misguided perception. The third one is vikalpa. Vikalpa is imagination. The senses is not giving us information, perhaps to some extent, but a lot of it is imagined by our mind, and those are causing vrittis. So pramana, viparyaya, vikalpa. Then comes the fourth that is constantly causing vrittis, and that is nidrā. Nidrā is sleep. When you are sleeping also, sleep itself is an impression that is formed on the chitta. We'll explore each of these in detail in the classes that will follow. And then the last one is smṛtayaḥ. Smṛtaya, smriti. Smriti is memory. So the 5 types or 5 categories of vrittis that Patanjali enumerates in this particular sutra: pramāṇa, viparyaya, pramāṇa-viparyaya-vikalpa-nidrā-smṛtayaḥ. This is all that this sutra does, simply lists out the 5 types. So let us go to the Sutra 7. In Sutra 7, Patanjali explains the first of these 5 types, which is pramāṇa. He talks about 3 types of this pramāṇa, this cognition, this sensual perception, the information that comes to us are of 3 types on which we form impressions and beliefs and all of that, right? So how does that sutra go? The 7th sutra of Patanjali Yoga Sutras. And the sutra goes like this: pratyakṣa-anumâna-āgamā pramāṇāni. Pratyakṣa-anumâna-āgamā pramāṇāni. So this pramāṇa, this cognition through senses, are of 3 types. First one is pratyakṣa. Pratyakṣa is direct perception. Then comes anumāna. Anumāna is inference. You infer something. And the third one is āgamā. Āgamā is based on what you listen to. Let us explore each of these a little bit in detail. Pratyakṣa. Pratyakṣa pramāṇa. Okay, these are all different types of pramāṇa. So the first one is pratyakṣa pramāṇa. Pratyakṣa is what I see. Now Vyasa, when he explains this in his commentary, says every object has, as an example, every object has generic and specific properties. In Pratyaksha Pramāṇa, we have access to this generic and specific properties, and because of specific properties, we can ascertain directly by first-hand experience what that object is and get clarity. For example, if I am at a distance of 100 feet from a store and there is a mannequin outside the store. Somebody, a bald guy, looks like me, he's wearing a suit and a coat. At the very first sight, the mannequin and I have general properties. The mannequin has 2 hands, I have 2 hands, he has a head, I have head, he is bald, I am bald, 2 legs, 2 legs. So there are general properties. But that could give us a misguided perception as if there is another person there, or I could think that is my image there, but it's not. Why? Because then when I get closer and I examine specific properties, what are specific properties? The mannequin also has 2 eyes, I also have 2 eyes, but are those eyes blinking? Is the mannequin moving? Moving is a specific property of human beings. Right? Chaitra, Vyasa explains, based on the specific property of a human being, which is movement, I can determine whether that mannequin is a statue, a mannequin, or is it a real human being. So movement of eyelids, movement of legs, movement of hands. And then of course there are other things, right, that form the specific properties, the softness of the skin. My skin is soft, the mannequin may not be as soft. So based on specific properties, I have a direct knowledge that comes to me, pratyaksha pramāṇa. Pratyaksha means direct perception, first-hand experience that this is a statue, this is not Sundar. This is not me, this is not my reflection, this is actually a statue that may look like me, but it is not me. Now all of these are vrittis, right? Now, like Patanjali says, each of these can be binding and non-binding. Okay, they can be benign, non-harmful, and they can be harmful as well. So here, a perception like this, if I don't go into the specific properties, I might assume that is me, and I might make a wrong decision. Now taking this example a little further, where we get bound is when we look around and allow our senses to give us information, and then decide, wait a minute, this is it, this is reality. This is reality. This is all that life is all about. There is nothing more. or less to life than this. And that is why even in our conversations, we can discuss great concepts such as these right now, but then we say, let's come back down to reality. Because at some level we feel this is real, much more real than, let us say, an astral plane of existence, a different dimension of existence. Why do we feel this is more real? It's simply because we have convinced ourselves the impressions that are coming on our chitta. It's like, when the nerves fire together, they wire together, right? The habitual patterns of thinking are based on sensual information, and therefore I restrict my idea of reality to what is pratyaksha, what is directly perceivable by my senses. And therefore, such impressions can bind my chitta. My chitta is constantly forming these objects, becoming the world around me. And I cannot understand or go beyond this. Therefore, the same perceptions can be binding. Right? But if I look at a symbolic statue like the statue of Shiva or the Shiva Lingam in temples such as these, then I begin to see what is the symbolism of this. So though my senses are perceiving simply a stone, I begin to understand that there is something more. It liberates me from my conditional thinking of 2 hands, 2 legs. Suddenly I see 4 hands, I see 8 hands, I see 2 heads, 4 heads of Brahma. Right? Vishnu has 4 hands and Shiva is basically formless. Suddenly it opens my mind. Though my senses are giving me information, I am learning something else. So that is liberating. And that leads us to the second kind of pramana. So one is pratyaksha, then the second in this pramana is inference. Inference, anumana. So the senses are giving you information. We are still on the first type of vritti, pramana. In pramana there is pratyaksha, anumana and agama. So pratyaksha we just saw. Anumana is inference. What is inference? The senses give me information. Based on that information, I infer something else. For example, I see a mountain and I can infer that that mountain will not move, that the mountain is steady based on the generic quality as opposed to a human being that can move. I see a mountain such as this on top of a hill. I'm on top of a very beautiful mountain where this temple is located. So I can see the mountain and I can safely infer that this mountain will not move because that is a generic property of a mountain. If I see smoke on top of the hill, I can infer that there is fire because smoke is always associated with fire. So I infer that there must be fire on top of the hill because I see the smoke. You see something and you infer from that. That is called anumana. So anumana can also be liberating and binding. Now we talked about in the last example that I walk into a temple such as this and I see the Shivalinga, I see a statue of Shakti, I see a statue, a symbol, all of these are symbolism. So symbolic statue of Shiva, and then I infer what the higher reality, what the higher dimension of existence can be based on what I see. It is inference. I am inferring. So inference is anumana. Based on the alarm that is set, I can infer what time I am going to get up. It is derived information. Information that is derived, primary source of information is still pratyaksha. It is still the senses. But from that primary source of information, I am going to derive and come to certain conclusions. Now, could that be wrong conclusions? It could be, very well. And that is what binds us. When I look at a Shiva statue, when I look at a statue of Shakti, and if I feel that statue is God, and somehow I am not and other things are not, only that statue is God, then I am limiting my understanding to that particular statue. And therefore my inference, my perception can be limited to that. And therefore such inferences can be binding. We could we could do wrong judgments about people based on what we see. If I see somebody driving an expensive car or in an expensive car, I could infer wrongly that that person is very rich. It could be a completely wrong inference. That person could be in great debt, but he is simply indulging in buying a car. We don't know that, right? It is an inference that I could come. So we could make assumptions based on what I see, what I touch, what I listen, what I taste. I could make certain assumptions which can be binding in nature, and therefore my chitta can be bound in those, or I can make assumptions that can liberate me, which are non-afflicting. This is why Patanjali is talking about. This is what he is talking about. So not only are we creating impressions, these kind of impressions that are coming from pratyaksha, direct perception, or impressions that are coming from inferences. I'm inferring something, I'm assuming something based on what I see and hear. They're all impressions, and these impressions can bind me or liberate me. The third type of this pramāṇa, as explained in the 7th sutra, because Patanjali talks of 3 of the pramāṇa, anumāna and āgamā. Āgamā is based on what I listen to, what somebody tells me. Just think about this. I have no access. My senses doesn't give me that kind of perception. I can't see. If somebody tells me the world is round and it is actually suspended in the cosmos, the globe, for example, do you and I see it really as a globe? We don't. If I look around, I just see the sky and the earth seems pretty flat. And I actually, believe it or not, had a conversation which didn't last very long, where the person across the table insisted that the earth is flat, and somehow we are being fooled into thinking it is round. I'm not kidding. I really had that conversation. So there are people who might say that's how it is. Okay, so I look around and I see the earth which is seemingly flat, but I'm told that it is round and that it is suspended in the cosmos and it is going around at thousands of miles per hour around the sun, not only revolving around itself but going around the sun. But what do I experience? I'm experiencing the sun moving, not me, right? But you and I know that this is not true. My senses are giving me a different experience, but the truth is different. What is the truth? The truth is that the earth is revolving around itself and it is going around the sun counterclockwise, correct? And therefore, how did I come to that? How did I come to that, and how am I allowing those kind of impressions to be falling on my chitta, and my chitta to develop that kind of information and sources? Is because I heard this information. Hearing means I read about it, somebody told me, scientists have told me, NASA tells me that, right? So then I borrow that information and I allow that to form my reality. So this is called, I got a little distracted because there's a monkey that is jumping around. So this is called āgamā. Āgamā is based on what somebody else says. This is what the entire teachings of Vedas are. This is what Bible is all about. It's all about what I'm listening. Whether it's a Quran or the Bible or any of the scriptures that are thousands of years old, we base it on listening. This is where belief is formed, and belief is a very, very powerful factor. When you and I shop in Amazon, we want to buy a particular product, we look at what other people say, what are the reviews from other people. So based on those reviews, we make our decision. So though you might think that this is a very small aspect of how we form an idea of reality, this becomes a very important. How can something like this be binding? Think of what problem we are facing today in social media. We have come to imprison ourselves based on what other people think about us. So if I'm going to put a picture of mine on YouTube or Facebook or some such social media platform, Instagram for example, then I want to make sure I look good. And then I want to see what other people think of what I put or what did I post. So this, to some extent, is a good feedback, but then when you cross the lines, you define yourself based on other people, what you think other people are thinking about you. We define our lives. We buy a car so that others will think we are rich. We buy a home so that others will think we are well placed in society. We dress because we want others to think we are so and so. We are projecting, perhaps, a false projection, and we are living our lives for others' sake. Is that binding or is it liberating? I'm asking you a question and you perhaps know the answer. So when we cross a limit, that same vrittis that I can borrow from a teacher and open and expand my thinking, because otherwise how do I know about Shiva and Shakti? How do I know about the Christ consciousness or the Krishna consciousness? How do I know about Buddha unless somebody tells me? And that liberates my thinking from conditioned patterns of thought. And that kind of liberating vrittis open the chitta. So the same vrittis can bind you and liberate you. Thus, in the first of the 5 types, pramāṇa, which we talked about in the 6th sutra, in the pramāṇa itself there are 3 types: pratyakṣa-anumâna, pramāṇa, and agama pramāṇa. These are the 3 things that we have to remember in this particular sutra. I hope you find this class useful. I always find that thoughts like these are so enriching because it makes us mindful, makes us think deeply. What are my vrittis that are binding me more and more and constricting my chitta? And what are the vrittis, because they are all vrittis, what are the vrittis that can eventually lead me to ekagra? And then from there take me on to nirodha. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share this divine knowledge from such sacred and ancient temples and portals. It gives me the greatest pleasure. Stay blessed, stay inspired. Namaste.
क्लीं